kind of tell how my dad came up in this country. He was the first white man to come and live with the Indians up here, and he came in 1909 as a helper for a man who thought there were precious metals up here. And he was an older man, and he was a prospector, and he advertised for a young man to come with him, carry his heavy mining equipment, pitch his tent, and cook for him. And my dad answered that ad and came. My dad he was born in Minneapolis, but they moved to the Malacca area when he was 2 years old, and that's where he was at this time. And they came, there was no road to Grand Marais. They came by boat, the America, and they just walked up to the Gunflint Trail, up Maple Hill and above Headstrom's there. And as soon as they got along the trail, they would stop and drill, and this man would drill and looking for these precious metals, and they'd pitch their tent and stay there. And all there were up here at that time were Indians. And of course the Indians were interested in what they were doing. They'd never seen anybody doing that, you know. There had been a Paulson mine up at Gunflint earlier, but it went by rail through to Canada, and so there really hadn't been too much stuff down on the lower trail. First of all, the Gunflint Trail got its name. There was the Indians always trapped for animals, and the fur traders came in the spring, and they traded goods and money for their furs. And when the young men started trading for guns, they needed a gunflint to ignite the powder, to blow the, you know. And you can imagine what a godsend that was for them, because they were used to shooting deer and bear and moose and with bows and arrows. And so they were really happy to get these bullets. And before spring came and the fur traders came back, they would be hunting for something to make that spark. And so they'd be grinding down stones and everything. There was this old Indian down at Grand Portage who knew that there was a lake north of Grand Marais that had flat, layered rocks. And he thought they would make good because they're easy to break apart and that they'd work as good flints. So one day he decided to go there, and he made the Gunflint Trail. And he went to Gunflint, where this flat stones are, and he brought them back, and they worked wonderfully. And so now all the young Indians, when they were looking for flints, they would go and walk up this trail to Gunflint and get them. And so they started calling it the Gunflint Trail. And so when people started coming up here, it never changed. They always called it the Gunflint Trail. Anyway, when my dad came, they never found any precious metals. But the Indians told my dad about all the furs that they got. My dad trapped around Lake Mille Lacs, and so he was really interested. And of course, he just fell in love with the country, you know, beautiful lakes. And they spent the whole summer here. They never found any precious metals, any gold or silver, but my dad absolutely lost his heart. And the Indians invited him to come and live with them. They live in a tent all year, and they trap and they make all this money. And so my dad decided to do that. So he goes back to Malacca, and he was trained as a carpenter. And so now he's working, trying to save money to make enough to buy a tent and a sleeping bag and some warm clothes and some traps. It took him 2 years to do that. And now he finally had enough money to buy all that. And he asked my mom to marry him. My mom worked in the Malacca Hotel, but my mother said, oh, I don't think I could live in a tent, but if you build a cabin, I'll come. So my dad came up here and lived with the Indians, and the Indians said that he became a better Indian than most of them. And I'm sure it was because he was young and ambitious,